The sole body recovered from one of Australia's greatest naval tragedies has finally been identified. Today marks 80 years since the sinking of the HMAS Sydney during the Second World War.
The wreck of HMAS Sydney has lay hidden in darkness beneath the Indian Ocean for decades. But when Navy divers finally reached it, they didn't just find twisted steel. They found unsettling clues frozen in time, more than 2 kilometers below the surface. What was buried inside the wreckage, and why did it leave experts shaken? Join us as we explore the HMAS Sydney in its watery grave. What the wreck revealed. The HMAS Sydney lies more than 2 kilometers beneath the surface of the Indian Ocean, preserved in darkness and silence. When Navy divers finally reached the wreck, the scale of what they found was immediate and unambiguous. The ship had succumbed to age or pressure. It had the marks of a sudden, violent encounter that had ended in a short time. The metal was twisted from bow to stern and scorched. It was fractured in patterns that revealed a story no archive had fully captured. The most striking damage was concentrated in the forward sections of the vessel. Areas that housed the bridge, navigation, and primary weapon controls were torn and deformed, showing the terrifying impacts of the initial hits. These were not random impacts or the result of long-term deterioration. They were precise and focused. The bridge had been hit almost immediately, eliminating any chance for organized communication or coordinated response. Control systems, gun targeting, and signal equipment had been disabled before the crew could react. Without command, the ship's potential to defend itself, or even signal for help, was gone. The forward gun turrets showed similar evidence. Plates were bent inward, and mounting structures were fractured, suggesting that they were struck before being fully deployed. Shells had penetrated critical compartments, causing fires that spread unevenly through the ship. Some areas were reduced to scorched, twisted metal, while others remained relatively intact. This juxtaposition told divers and investigators that the ship's internal chaos had unfolded rapidly, leaving certain areas untouched simply because the destructive forces had not reached them yet. It was a sudden and selective destruction. The hull itself offered additional insight. Despite the intensity of the damage, the ship had remained largely intact as it sank. She rested upright, undistorted by deep water collapse. The structural integrity suggested that she did not break apart while descending, like the Titanic. Instead, she went down as a single unit. This observation reinforced the conclusion that the ship had lost buoyancy and control quickly, rather than being shredded by long-term impact or explosion at depth. The wreck's preservation allowed investigators to see the pattern of destruction clearly, and to infer the speed and sequence of events that led to the sinking. That wasn't all. The pattern of charred interiors indicated sudden ignition and rapid spread, likely exacerbated by ruptured systems and explosions in ammunition storage. Certain compartments were scorched beyond recognition, while others appeared untouched, sealed by bulkheads and remaining structurally sound. These contrasts reflected the rapid, compartmentalized nature of the damage and the impossibility of organized firefighting. The ship had been disabled in moments, leaving its systems unable to contain the destruction. On the absence of a distress signal, theories could be explained through these findings. With critical communication systems destroyed almost immediately, there had been no opportunity to send out a call for help. This silence was long a source of speculation, and it was not the result of negligence or error, but a direct consequence of the engagement. The wreck confirmed that Sydney's disappearance was the product of precise and early targeting. It was not a prolonged struggle or mismanagement. The spatial arrangement of damage also revealed the engagement's intensity. The ship's bow and forward areas bore concentrated impacts, indicating that the enemy had closed to a very short range. There was no evidence of sustained exchange at long distances. The action had occurred almost point blank, leaving little chance for maneuver or defensive adjustment. The ship's position on the seafloor, upright yet tilted slightly to one side, suggested she had gone down quickly but in a single, controlled motion, reinforcing the notion of a rapid, catastrophic engagement. Piecing all the clues together, here's what we can say happened to the ship. It was caught in a concentrated attack without warning. It couldn't counteract. It was destroyed and its command compromised. As for the men in the ship, their fates can be easily imagined. This deduction was so shocking and disturbing to the world. But why? Stick with us as history unfolds. Why this discovery was so disturbing. The disappearance of HMAS Sydney many years ago remained one of Australia's most haunting naval mysteries. Historians, families, and naval experts struggled to reconcile the ship's sudden loss with the capabilities it had possessed. Sydney was a modern, well-armed vessel, crewed by trained sailors. It operated with confidence and discipline. The idea that it could vanish entirely during a single engagement challenged expectations. The wreck revealed why, and the story it told was more unsettling. What made the discovery profoundly disturbing? Let's start with the immediacy of the ship's defeat. Too sudden and quick. Damage was concentrated in areas critical to command and control, and the speed with which these systems were disabled meant the engagement was effectively decided within the opening moments. Sydney's crew had no opportunity to coordinate a response, organize defenses, or send warnings. The ship's strength, which might have been decisive under normal circumstances, was neutralized before it could be brought fully to bear. The wreck revealed that the loss was not the result of prolonged struggle or gradual degradation, but a rapid and irreversible collapse triggered by precise, early hits. The close proximity of the engagement magnified the intensity of its outcome. Naval engagements at distance allow for incremental adjustments and tactical maneuvers. At the ranges suggested by the wreck, those options vanished. The enemy ship had approached sufficiently close to deliver concentrated fire that overwhelmed Sydney's defensive and offensive capabilities. The rapid sequence of impacts, combined with internal fires and secondary explosions, left the vessel incapacitated almost immediately. It became apparent that even a single misjudgment in approach, timing, or positioning could determine the fate of the ship and all aboard. That was exactly what happened. Observers were struck by what the wreck implied about what the sailors endured during the attack. The ship was destroyed instantly. Key compartments were compromised, while others remained untouched. Fires consumed parts of the vessel unevenly, forcing immediate abandonment in some areas, while others remained unscathed. It was a chaotic, selective devastation, one that offered almost no chance for effective intervention or escape. For the investigators, the reality was terrifying. The sailors had little opportunity to respond to such a catastrophe, and their demise was sure at the first shot. For decades, speculation had filled the void, left by absence of evidence. The wreck replaced rumor with tangible proof that the absent distress signal had not been the work of negligence, proof that the rumored mystery had been far from the truth. Still, that proof was more chilling than any hypothesis because it demonstrated that even disciplined, capable forces could be rendered helpless almost immediately in combat. The psychological impact on historians and naval experts came not only from understanding the speed of Sydney's loss, but also from recognizing the broader implications. The engagement illustrated how slight the margin between preparedness and catastrophe can be. The ship's design, training, and firepower could not overcome the effect of precision strikes delivered under such critical conditions. The wreck became a lesson in vulnerability and a defeat in history. Equally disturbing was the ordinariness of the evidence. There was no dramatic failure of engineering or heroic last stand frozen in the wreck. No extraordinary act of negligence or sabotage explained the loss. Instead, the ship had succumbed to an ordinary lethal convergence of circumstances, like speed, proximity, precision, and the sudden loss of command. This ordinariness made it more frightening because it suggested that being prepared was not enough. Finally, the wreck confirmed the immediacy of the crew's fate. With command and control disabled, critical systems destroyed, and fires spreading quickly, escape was largely impossible. Evacuation procedures could not be executed, lifeboats could not be launched effectively, and internal corridors became lethal traps. The totality of the loss was revealed with no exaggeration and definitely no myths. It was a sober, silent testimony of the ship itself. The ocean had preserved every detail of that collapse, as though waiting for divers to uncover the truth. Now that the world has found it, this harsh reality that outweighs every speculation ever imagined, the truth can be known from the myth, and the fallen can rest in peace. Stay tuned to witness the story of another ship with a similar fate. The other wreck confirmed it. Even with the finding of the HMAS Sydney, the story was only half complete. Before this, historians had relied on survivor accounts from the German raider Cormoran, which had been scuttled after the battle. When survey teams located the Cormoran's wreck decades later, it revealed a haunting symmetry. The evidence from both ships aligned in a way that confirmed the scale, intensity, and speed of the engagement, transforming long-standing assumptions into an inescapable truth. The Cormoran lay broken on the ocean floor. Its hull was partially collapsed, but its structure largely preserved. Diver footage and sonar imaging revealed damage patterns that mirrored the observations made on Sydney. The superstructure had been pierced in multiple locations, internal compartments were burnt or collapsed, and certain sections showed the deliberate scuttling actions the German crew had described in post-battle reports. More importantly, the positions and nature of the damage confirmed that the two vessels had engaged at extremely close range, leaving little room for error or tactical maneuvering. The Cormoran's wreck told the same story as Sydney's. The fight was fast. It ended brutally, and it was overwhelmingly decisive from the very first shots. Comparing the wrecks allowed experts to reconstruct the battle in unprecedented detail. The angle of impacts on Sydney, matched with the damage visible on Cormoran, demonstrated that the German vessel had delivered precise, concentrated fire at the forward sections of Sydney almost immediately. The bridge, turrets, and critical control areas were struck before Sydney could respond effectively, as the wreck itself had indicated. The Cormoran's condition corroborated this timeline, showing that internal explosions and fires had occurred concurrently with the disabling strikes on Sydney. The two wrecks, separated by distance and time, together preserved a single sequence of moments in the ocean floor's cold silence. The discovery also resolved questions about the survivors of Cormoran. Accounts from the German crew described a rapid exchange of fire, followed by scuttling procedures to prevent capture. These testimonies had long been viewed with skepticism, but the wreck provided tangible verification. Holes, breaches, and burn patterns precisely matched descriptions of hits sustained during the encounter. Even the sequence of internal explosions and the damage caused to ammunition storage aligned with survivor recollections. For the first time, the divergence between oral testimony and physical evidence had collapsed, and it left a cohesive, factual narrative. The alignment of evidence from both wrecks was technical and human. It revealed the speed at which decisions, actions, and consequences unfolded. The crew of Sydney had no opportunity to correct the situation, just as Cormoran's crew barely escaped the same level of destruction through scuttling measures. The wrecks together painted a picture of two ships locked in a brief, decisive confrontation, where proximity and timing determined survival or annihilation. Sydney was incapacitated in minutes, while Cormoran survived, only because her crew acted swiftly to abandon ship and scuttle what remained. The contrast between the two outcomes reflect the short walk between life and death in such a confrontation. During close-range naval engagements, even small miscalculations, tiny delays in action, or slight variations in trajectory could have altered the outcome entirely. Sydney's loss was not a result of inferiority or incompetence, but a combination of circumstances that favored rapid, overwhelming strikes. Cormoran's survival, limited though it was, emphasized how controlled response and quick decision-making could save a vessel even when the odds were unfavorable. Together, the wrecks offered a silent lesson in the mechanics of survival and destruction at sea. Finally, the existence of both wrecks allowed historians and divers to view the confrontation as a complete, interconnected event, rather than fragmented anecdotes. The ocean floor had preserved two halves of the same story, each reinforcing the other. Where Sydney's wreck had conveyed sudden, total destruction, Cormoran's confirmed the pace and method of the engagement, validating survivor testimonies and eliminating much of the ambiguity that had lingered for decades. The pairing revealed a truth that was more sobering than speculation, more compelling than narrative. It's two ships, two wrecks, and one brief and brutal encounter preserved in the deep. The confirmation provided by Cormoran's wreck transformed the historical understanding of Sydney's fate. The combined evidence clarified the intensity, rapidity, and outcome of the battle in precise terms. It left little room for alternative explanations. The ever-patient ocean had recorded both sides of the engagement with meticulous accuracy. In its silence, it confirmed that HMAS Sydney had been struck decisively, almost instantly, and that the tragedy was as sudden as it was total. The twin wrecks told the same story and taught the same lesson. Let's go back a little to where it all began. Keep watching. There was a ship, the story of HMAS. Sydney does not begin with its sinking, even though that part of the story seems to be the most relevant. The ship's disappearance had been a national enigma, a wound in Australia's wartime memory that refused to heal. Families waited for news, but it never came. Naval officers combed records, searching for an explanation. Rumors, speculation, and conflicting testimonies filled the void. Only when the wreck was discovered did the true sequence of events get clearer and the ship's story became important. Sydney was a symbol of national confidence and naval prowess. It was commissioned in the 1930s as one of the most advanced warships in the Royal Australian Navy. It carried a sense of pride that extended beyond military circles. Sydney was large, modern, and heavily armed, with a crew trained to operate efficiently under pressure. Her reputation suggested reliability, and she was trusted to patrol the seas with precision. This prestige magnified the shock when she vanished without a trace and left a profound emptiness in both public consciousness and military assessment. The events leading to the engagement reveal the complexities of wartime operations. Sydney had been tasked with intercepting German raiders operating off Australia's western coast, part of a broader effort to safeguard shipping and maintain maritime security. The crew was experienced and well-trained. It approached their duties with diligence and discipline. The mission was routine in planning, but routine could not prevent the unpredictability of contact with an enemy vessel. The story of preparation, training, and confidence underscores the tragedy of what followed. It was a capable crew, undone in minutes by circumstances beyond their control. Families, historians, and the public had long tried to reconcile the ship's reputation with the mystery of its loss. Questions circulated for decades. Why had no distress signal been sent? And how could the ship be destroyed entirely? It was so bad there were no records of survivors. The wreck answered some questions directly, yet it also reframed the significance of the ship's history. Every detail of Sydney's origin, every aspect of its design and deployment, mattered precisely because the vessel's capabilities made the speed and completeness of its destruction more confusing. The story of the ship's life set the stage for understanding the gravity of its death. The human dimension is essential. Crew members had trained for this kind of encounter, drilled repeatedly in combat procedures, emergency responses, and shipboard coordination. Yet the wreck revealed that no training could counteract the immediacy and precision of the blows delivered at close range. The sequence of events left no room for organized defense or evacuation. In this sense, the backstory is not a prelude to heroism or failure. It is the context that illuminates the suddenness and inevitability of the tragedy. It allows observers to appreciate both the capability and the vulnerability inherent in naval warfare. The broader strategic context also gains clarity once the wreck is considered. Sydney was part of a network of vessels tasked with securing sea lanes and countering raiders like Cormoran. The engagement was not a random encounter. It was a confrontation shaped by operational imperatives and maritime intelligence. Sydney's beginning places the confrontation as a collision between preparedness and circumstance, between human effort and the unpredictability of combat. Without understanding the ship's background, the rapidity of its loss risks being misinterpreted as negligence or miscalculation, rather than the result of overwhelming conditions. The backstory also enriches the emotional resonance of the wreck. Knowing that Sydney had been a symbol of pride, a well-armed and capable warship, underscores the magnitude of the loss. Every piece of evidence on the seafloor, from the twisted bulkheads to the intact compartments, becomes more poignant when viewed against the history of the ship's life. It is not just metal and machinery that was lost, it's more than that. Expertise, trust, and national confidence preserved in the hands of sailors who faced a threat and failed. Ultimately, this story matters because it provides perspective. The wreck alone communicates the brutality and precision of the engagement, but understanding the ship's origin, reputation, and mission reveals why the loss resonated so deeply for decades. It transforms a story of destruction into a narrative of context, human preparation, and operational significance. Sydney's past informs the tragedy of its end, turning steel and shadow into a story that is both compelling and deeply human. Now to the occupants of the ships and their unfortunate story. Stay tuned. Why there were no survivors. In the fall of HMAS Sydney, it is easy to imagine a scenario in which some crew might have escaped into lifeboats, sent distress signals, or clung to floating debris. Yet the wreck remembers it differently. Every detail, from the pattern of damage to the position of the ship on the seabed, points to a sudden, complete catastrophe, one that left the crew with zero chance of survival. Critical damage to the bridge and forward control sections occurred almost immediately. This struck at the heart of the ship's ability to navigate, coordinate, and respond. Without functioning command, orders for evacuation or emergency measures could not be issued. The crew was deprived of guidance from the very first moments of engagement. In practical terms, this meant that lifeboats could not be launched in an organized manner, emergency procedures could not be enacted, and the ship's systems designed to manage such crises were rendered useless before they could take effect. Fire damage compounded the disaster. Evidence from the wreck shows that multiple compartments caught fire almost simultaneously, likely ignited by explosions in munitions, storage, and ruptured fuel systems. Fires spread unevenly, and the internal layout of the ship, which under normal circumstances allowed for orderly movement and evacuation, became a maze of lethal hazards. The absence of distress signals and communication underscores this conclusion. With command, navigation, and communication systems disabled early, there was no way to call for assistance. The ocean remained silent, not because help was unavailable, but because the crew could not alert anyone to their plight. Rescue, which in other circumstances might have been possible, was rendered irrelevant by the immediacy of the catastrophe. The wreck leaves no room for alternative explanations. The combination of sudden damage, fires, structural collapse, and rapid sinking ensured that survival was, tragically, impossible. Human accounts from the German survivors of Cormoran provide additional context. They reported observing the rapid incapacitation of Sydney during the battle, noting how quickly the ship lost mobility and the ability to respond. Their descriptions align with the physical evidence seen in the wreck: the early concentrated strikes, rapid spread of fires, and a loss of operational control. The corroboration between survivor testimony and wreck observations removes doubt about why no crew could survive. The events unfolded faster than human response could manage, leaving little hope once the first blows were delivered. The tragic reality of Sydney's loss lies in its inevitability once the engagement began. The ship's capabilities, crew training, and preparedness, while significant, were overwhelmed in moments. Every feature designed to protect or save the crew was neutralized almost immediately. The wreck, preserved by the depths, silently records this unbroken sequence of failure and consequence, a stark and undeniable explanation for the totality of the loss. From the angle of descent to the pattern of damage, the wreck demonstrates why no one survived. It shows the impossibility of escape once the critical systems were destroyed, the fires ignited, and the structure compromised. The ocean now holds both the evidence and the memory. Up next is more truth and more mystery untangled. Let's hear it. The truth written in steel. HMAS. Sydney's story was, for a long time, shrouded in rumor and speculation. Today it reaches its ultimate clarity and stands as truth written in steel for all the world to see. This is not an exaggeration. Every bend in the hull, every fractured bulkhead, every scorched corridor communicates the exact sequence of events in a language that historians, divers, and naval engineers can read with precision. The wreck is a relic. It is also a document of history, inscribed in iron, fire, and shadowy waters, waiting for those who are willing to study it. We've mentioned the scorched areas, twisted beams, and ruptured compartments, which reveal that fires broke out simultaneously in multiple sections. This was likely triggered by secondary explosions in ammunition and fuel storage. We've told you that these fires spread unevenly, sparing some areas while destroying others, and documenting the chaos that engulfed the ship's interior. The evidence shows not just damage, but the order and speed in which it occurred, giving divers and analysts a clear understanding of how the ship's systems failed and why the crew could not respond in time. Every charred bulkhead is a marker, a page in the story of Sydney's final moments. This demonstrates that the catastrophe was sudden and complete, not drawn out or ambiguous, and reinforces the conclusion that there were no survivors because every escape route and safety system had been compromised almost immediately. The wreck also contextualizes the engagement with the German raider Cormoran. The twin wrecks act as complementary documents, one detailing the sudden destruction, the other confirming the sequence and conditions of the attack. Together, they eliminate much of the historical uncertainty, providing a holistic, verified account of an event that had long been obscured by rumor and conjecture. Beyond the technical details, the wreck communicates the human dimension of the tragedy. The wreck becomes a silent witness, telling the story of courage, preparation, and human vulnerability without words. It documents the interplay between technology, strategy, and fate, showing how even a well-armed and disciplined crew could be rendered powerless in a few decisive minutes. The broader significance lies in what the wreck teaches about history and memory. For decades, speculation, rumor, and partial accounts shaped the narrative of Sydney's loss. The discovery and detailed survey of the wreck provide an authoritative source, one that validates some historical reports, refutes others, and clarifies the reality of the engagement. It transforms an enduring mystery into a verifiable historical record, giving families, historians, and the public a concrete understanding of what happened. The truth, preserved in steel, is more sobering than any story previously imagined. Yet, it is undeniably real. In the end, the wreck of HMAS Sydney is a testament to both human achievement and the unpredictability of combat. Its steel walls, scorched interiors, and twisted bulkheads tell a story of preparation, capability, sudden destruction, and irrevocable loss. It is a history that cannot be rewritten, a truth recorded not in documents or testimony alone, but in the very fabric of the ship itself. The ocean holds the wreck as both memorial and lesson. It is a silent witness to the fragility of life, the precision of warfare, and the clarity with which history can speak when preserved with such stark, unyielding honesty. The truth is there, waiting for those who are willing to read it. So, thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video. And don't forget to subscribe for more.